Okay, so now we're going to do bracelet number 4 in this set. So what I have here is I've got 2 pieces of leather cord, 15 inches long. I've got 2 strands of crochet cotton thread, the heavier count of thread, and each one of these are 5 feet long. And again, I've got 2 feet of the wax linen cord, and this is going to be for our Turk's head knot for our closure. So I'm going to set that back here out of the way. And we have 13 beads, and these are actually, they're called roller crystal matte, so they're kind of like mini donuts, and they're 9mm beads. And I think these are just super cute. They've got this matte finish to them, and they're little donuts. So cute. Alright, so now I'm going to start attaching our cord to our leather, our suede leather lacing. And what the important thing to remember about our cord is that the center cords are not going to be tying any knots, so we don't have to have the center cord to be multiples in length of our finished piece. So what I'm going to do is because our cord is 5 feet long, so I'm going to take the first 12 inches, just to be safe. Don't want to cause any issues. We still have to be able to string our beads onto this cord and tie a knot below, so we don't want to run out of cord. And this will be our center cord that our beads are going to be attached to. We're going to do a lark's head knot, just a regular lark's head knot, to going over our cord. And one thing that we're going to want to make sure is where our shorter cord is at in making our loop for the lark's head knot. So it is on the right hand side. So what we want to do is we want to flip it, so when we attach it here, and we'll be attaching it at roughly 4 inches from the end, which is about there. When we attach it and do our lark's head knot, the shorter end of the cord is going to be on the edge facing up. So again, we're roughly at our 4-inch mark. We'll just slide this down just a scotch right there. That's a good spot. Alright, so what we need to do is our lark's head knot is facing inward on our bracelet. So we need to make sure that the shorter cord is the cord that's going to be towards the short end of our lacing right here, because that is what's going to become the center cord for our knots to be tied around. So keeping that in mind, now we need to attach the cord to the other side. So we want to make sure we leave this one laying there for us, because that's the inside edge. And again, over here we want to make sure that we're going to measure our cord to make sure we have our loop for our lark's head knot in the right spot. So we're going to measure out 12 inches, and that's where our loop needs to be for our lark's head knot. And we'll come back to the ruler in a moment. So again, if our lark's head knot is going to be attaching on this side, we need the short edge of the cord. We need the short edge of the cord to be oriented that direction in relationship to our knot. So here again, we're going to go over the top and around the back, and our cords are going to go down the loop. Pulling it all the way through. cinching it up. And again, we're going to want to make sure that our lark's head knot is roughly 4 inches from the end of our lacing, so we'll just slide it down into position, and that's a good spot. We like that. Okay, now comes the fun part, and what we want to do is we want to get our leather lacing together in a manner to where it will actually hold, but with the gap that we want. So we're going to use a small binder clip to bring our two laces together without losing our orientation to each other. This is always fun. This is to get them both caught by the clip, but to have them close enough together to where it's actually going to be a little bit more functional for what we're doing. And there we go, we did it. All right, so the next thing we want to do is even up our lark's head knot orientations. We need to have them even across from each other on our lacing. It's okay if we've shifted down a little bit from our 4-inch mark, as long as they are facing each other and matching up at this point. Alrighty. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually attach this to my stand so it will hold in place and make it a little bit easier for us to be working our knots. All right. Then the next thing to do is to get our short ends of short cord ends. And we're actually going to string all of our beads ahead of time, because what that's going to do, since there's going to be no knots tied with these cords from now on, and the only thing they need to do is lay there, we're going to string our 11 beads on now and tie a loop knot at the end of the cord to keep them from sliding off. And we're going to do 11 beads in total. I'm going to do a loop knot, because what that's going to do is the holes in these beads are pretty big. So if I was just to do a regular overhand knot without making a loop, there's a probability that the beads could just slide off on us. So that's actually going to help give us the tension that we need on these cords in the center, so we could do our square knots when it comes time to tying square knots on these cords. So once we get the first few knots on here, everything else is going to pretty much lay where it's supposed to be. So now we're going to get our first square knot on and get this going. So everything's still going to be a little bit floppy around for getting the first square knot on, because our cords, our leather lacing is still, they're not attached to each other yet, and this is where we actually formally attach them together. And then we're going to start doing half hitch knots that are going to mimic our lark's head knot, and they are double half hitch knots. Alright, so there's our first square knot. So now we're going to do the double half hitch knot. So what we need to do is we're going over the top, around the back, up through the loop that we've created, and now we're going to cinch up our knot and get it as close to our square knot as possible, and then holding it there securely in place, because a half hitch knot by itself is not secure, you need to actually follow it up with either another half hitch or a mirrored one, creating a double half hitch. But on its own, it's not a very secure knot, so you actually have to give it a little bit of support until you get the other half of it done, and we're going to do that by pinching it. So this part of the cord, we're going to need to have it create the same bridge that we have right there with the lark's head knot. So to create that bridge, I'm going to try to do this without getting my fingers in the way terribly much, is we need to have our cord come around the back and come down through the loop that we've created. So this is basically a bit of a reverse of the knot prior to it. That way when we pull this up, and cinch it tight, we've created the illusion of a lark's head knot using the double half hitch. And now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to go holding our cord, and we're creating our loop here. We're going over the top and around the back and up from behind and pulling it up to the top and getting it as close to our square knot as possible. We're still going to want to make sure that we maintain this gap between these two, between the lark's head and the double half hitch, because that's part of the aesthetic that we're going for on here. And so again, we need this bridge to maintain its shape. So to do that, we're going to go up from behind, over the top, and back down through the loop that we've created. If I can get a hold of the cord and pull it through. Sometimes our cord likes to be difficult. Alright, there we go. Pulling it through. Alright, now we're cinching it up to where again our double half hitch now is mimicking a lark's head knot. And here we're going to do another square knot below, because what that's going to do is it's going to secure our cords and give a bit more support to our double half hitch knots. Here's the first half of the knot, and here's the second half. There we go. Now we're going to bring up our first bead, and then after the bead we're going to tie another square knot. So there's the first half of the knot. Here's the second half. And everything's wanting to be twisty and wonky on me today. Okay. So now, and for the aesthetics of the cord, it's okay for it to be a little lax on either side of our bead. It doesn't have to be tight up against the bead on either side, because this particular cord, it's going to want to drop back, and that's going to be okay. It's not going to mess up our aesthetics. So again, we're going to create a loop on our cord. We're doing another half hitch knot, and we're going over the top and around the back and up through our loop. To create the first part of the bridge for our finished double half hitch knot, and now we're going to go around the back, over the top, and down through the loop. Sometimes you need more than just two hands for this. Alright, part of what's happening is our cord is not sliding incredibly well across the suede leather lacing that I'm using. But that's okay, it just means that when we're done, all of our knots are going to be pretty nicely secured because they're not going to be able to slide. Alright, now we're going to do the double half hitch knot on the opposite side. So now we're just going to do another square knot. Now we're going to do another set of the half hitch knots. So again, on the right hand side, we're going to hold our cord to create our loop. We're going to go over the top, around the back, and forward through the loop we've created. We're going to cinch that up as close to our square knot as possible, and still maintaining our gap between the other double half hitch knot, because that is the aesthetic we're going for. And for the second half of our half hitch knot, we're going to hold our cord to create the loop, and we're coming around the back, and over the top. And again, we're going to be cinching that up. And as we cinch up each time, we're pulling our cords towards the center of our piece that we're working on, just to get that orientation of that little bridge right there. So now we're going to do the knot on this left hand side, and again we're going to cinch up the half hitch knot to where it's tight. It's just being a little bit difficult because of the suede. There we go. So there it is, our successful half hitch knot. And now we're going to do another square knot. So now that we've done 2 of our double half hitch knots with 3 square knots, then we're bringing up our next bead. And we're going to do a square knot after the bead. So there's the first half of our square knot. And here's the second half of our square knot. Alright, so I'm just going to continue this to where it'll be 2 sets of double half hitch knots, and there'll be 3 square knots in total. So here's the first of the next 3 square knots. It's right below the bead. So the first square knot is below the bead, the second one is after the first set of double half hitch knots, and the third one is after the second set of double half hitch knots. So I'm going to continue this off camera and I'll come back to you soon. Okay, so I've completed all the knots and the square knots, and at the very end, after the last bead came up, I did 1 square knot, I did the double half hitch, the second square knots, and the double half hitch. And then what I did was I took the cords using the tapestry needle, the remaining bits of cords, and I spliced them back up through the square knots and through the last bead and the bottom portion of the square knot above the bead. So now what I'm going to do is trim off the remaining ends of the cords and taking care not to cut anything else besides those little stray ends. And then that takes care of all of our knotting and beading for this portion. We're not actually done with the knotting because we still have to do our Turk's head knot. So at this point we're going to remove our cord from our little bottle and we're going to deposit it onto our piece, and it's important to actually keep track of where the top is. So the top is here where all the little faux lark's head knots appear. So we're just going to slide our leather cord ends into the bottle just because it makes this initial lacing on that much quicker. And now making sure our bracelet is appropriately oriented, we're going to take the other two ends and take it through our Turk's head knot the opposite direction. Alright, so as you can see there's going to be a lot of taking up of slack here. And like with all of our other bracelets, we're going to use our little scrapped piece of cord to lash our ends together, just to hold them together and out of our way while we complete the Turk's head knot. Also, it helps keep the Turk's head knot in the middle of our work. So as we remove the slack from the knot itself, it has the opportunity to tighten down onto the cords appropriately. We do want to take a little bit of time to pull on our cords to keep them somewhat straight and orderly, and they're overlapping here. Right, that looks fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off camera now and I'm going to finish pulling up the slack. Again, I'm squishing my knot down to get it closer to my cord, the leather laces, so I can have a good idea as to how much slack I have in here that I need to be pulling out. And I will be starting from the end and going all the way around to the origin, making this section of the cord, the tail, get longer. Alright, so here we are. I've made a few more turns around this. I've got it pretty tight here, and I think what's going to tighten it up for the final phase is actually going around 4th time. So now I'm going to do my single overhand knot here to secure my tails together and pull it tight onto my knot. And now I'm going to thread my ends and start working them in opposite directions of each other to do our fourth round, and this will do the final tightening on our knot that we need. And on doing this round with this 4th segment to the knot, there will be occasion where I may actually pierce my cords, but that's actually going to be fine because I'm not going to be pulling any more slack out, so it's not going to be a problem if that does occur. I'm not trying to make that occur, but just in case it does, it's not going to be a problem. So the same goes for you when you're doing this, when you're doing your final go round. And this, what we're basically doing is we're embedding our tails into our knot and taking out any final slack that we may have in the knot to tighten it up. Alright, so I came through there, So I'm taking a look around, and it looks as though all of the sections have their 4. So at this point I can actually just snip off my tails, because they're going to stay embedded within the Turk's head knot. It's going to hold itself together. And that is done. And I'm actually going to bring my beads back at this point, because on this particular bracelet I think it looks really nice just to have added beads at the end of the strands, because they are longer than on the previous bracelets, and I actually can afford the space to have a bead at the end. So I'm just stringing on a bead and doing an overhand knot to finish off this bracelet. So there we go. I'm pulling our overhand knot really tight and getting it out as far as possible, and our bead just slides up against it. Alrighty, and there it is, with its lovely Turk's head knot for the slip knot for adjusting the bracelet. So there it is, bracelet number 4 with leather laces, and this one with the macrame knots for the double half hitch and the square knot, and these lovely beads. So here we have all 4 bracelets again. We started with the rune beads, then we did a simple bracelet where the majority of the work is in the whipping and the Turk's head knot. Then we had the donut, the jasper donut beads in a pattern that resembles musical notes, at least it does to me. And here's our final one with our square knot and double half hitch knots. And again, all 4 of these bracelets, their commonality is the Turk's head knot as the slip knot for the closure on all 4 of these bracelets. Well, I hope you enjoyed this set of bracelets, and I'd be curious to see your version of these. So please subscribe to my channel, and please like as well. And I'd like to see some feedback from y'all in the comments, and let me see what you've been making. Alright, well, thank you. Bye.